Hello, everyone. Can you see and hear me? Can you please just let me know in the chat box? If you don't have it open already, at the bottom of the screen, there's a little chat icon, and you can type in there and let us know if you can hear me okay. That's also going to be how we collect questions throughout the presentation that we can then address at the end. Great, okay, so I'm getting some responses. So yeah, you can send messages in the chat box to just one person if you want, or you can adjust it to send to everyone. So the presentation, how it's gonna be structured, I'm gonna run through a bunch of information, but please feel free to write questions or thoughts in the chat box as they come up. And then when we get to the Q&A section at the end, we'll go back through, we'll read out the questions out loud and address them sort of one by one. If there's any questions that we can't get to, then we will record them and we will send them out with the notes from this meeting at the end so that everyone can see the questions that were asked and the answers. So that is how we're going to proceed today. We are really excited to have you all here. This is our third of 3 membership meetings that we're sort of hosting throughout the day today to update people on what the Society of Gender Professionals is, how we came about, and what we're sort of working on as we get started here as an organization. So we're really excited to have you. Thank you all so much for coming and participating. Having membership participation is really what's going to make this organization what we hope it to be. So we do really rely on your involvement. Okay, so we will get started here. So like I said, welcome. We currently have, I think the last time we checked, about 849 registered members, and that number is growing every day. So this is, really thrilling since we started this process. We've gotten such a huge reception, and over 90 countries currently represented amongst the people who have signed up to be a part of SGP. So this is very, very exciting. And if you look at this map here, we have the countries highlighted in yellow are where we've received membership forms from. So it gives you an idea of the reach that we've had so far. We have great representation right now, but we're still trying to expand our networks and bring in people from around the world to participate in the development of this organization. All right, so this is the agenda and what we're going to go over today. We're going to do a quick introduction to SGP. As I mentioned, we want to make sure that everyone knows sort of who we are and what we're about. We're going to look at the results of the membership survey that we've been conducting to give you all an idea of who we are as members and what is everyone interested in learning from SGP. We're going to talk about SGP circles, which is how we envision a lot of our member participation taking place, so what those are and sort of where we are in the process of establishing them. And then we're going to look at next steps for moving forward. What's the next year look like? And we're going to also then lastly talk about some decisions that we are going to be turning to the membership to help us make. Because again, we do want this organization to be for the membership and by the membership. So I will introduce myself a little bit more in a moment. I realize I skipped over that part. But let me tell you first the vision of SGP. You may have seen this on our website, but we did want to state it very clearly for you all today. Our vision for this organization is to become the largest cross-sectoral network of gender specialists worldwide, with members who feel empowered with the resources and networks they need to thrive in their careers as gender specialists and to advance gender equality in member communities through coordinated feminist action. So what do we want to do with this network that we envision building? This is our mission, right? And this is published on our website, genderprofessionals.org. It has many parts, as you can see. One, to promote the development of intersectional gender expertise for professional practice, to strengthen connections between gender theory, policy, and practice, to support member collaboration, network building, mentoring, and leadership, those relationship building, to foster the production and dissemination of applied gender research, to provide a platform for the exchange of gender information and resources, and again, sort of this larger goal to be advancing gender equality in member communities through our coordinated action. Okay, So this is the startup team, including myself. So I'm Christina Gordon. I am currently the treasurer of our organization. I'm joined here today by Corinne Lapierre, one of our co-presidents, and Christy Kelly, another co-president. They'll be, joining me to help answer questions at the end. And we're actually coming to you from the offices of Men Engage today. They were so kind as to host us and lend us their space and their technology so that we could run these meetings. So we're really thankful to them. And also as part of the startup team, we have Angela Hartley, the secretary. We have Leah Goldman, Nicole Figo, and Carissa Singh, who have all been working to do just sort of the administrative legwork of getting this organization together. So as a little bit of history, we first came together in Washington, D.C. in March 2017. Corinne Lapierre put together a meeting of a bunch of gender specialists who are here in D.C. to say, what if we put together this network? Is this something that you all need, and what would it look like? And so out of that conversation, we started a lot of brainstorming, and a few of us sort of carried on to, again, start this legwork of actually putting it together. So those are the people you're looking at here. So in the last year, we've been meeting weekly to draft bylaws, to develop an organizational structure, a business plan, a plan for a leadership transition. We've registered as a nonprofit organization in the US. We're now incorporated in the state of Maryland. We've opened a bank account so we could purchase a web domain and email. We've developed our branding, as you can see, with some nice colors and all of that. We're working on a membership platform and building out our website. We've also been writing grant proposals to help get us funding, which we'll talk about more later. Working on networking and building out our membership, and establishing a structure for geographic and issue area circles, which again, I'm going to talk about more a little bit later. And we want to say that we recognize that this startup team is not representative of our wider membership. We do really envision this being an international organization that's pretty horizontally structured. So what we're trying to do is, as the startup team, intend to put structures in place during this startup period so that the organization will be for the members and by the members. And we're just trying to do the legwork to kind of make that happen. Okay, so moving on to a closer look at the membership. Who are all these people that have been joining SGP? Many of you have filled out a little membership survey that we put together and linked to our website. And if you haven't done so already, please do go to the website and click join us, and you'll fill out this survey. And we wanted to share some of the results with you to give you a sense of who we are and sort of who is in the room, so to speak, and what their hopes are for SGP. So the first thing we wanted to look at, the top 10 thematic areas of SGP members. As you can see, people could select multiple options, but a lot of people are working on women's empowerment. They're working on gender-based violence, prevention and response, human rights, gender identity and or sexuality, education. These were the themes that kept coming up over and over again in the survey. Moving on to geographic focus, we have people who work on all parts of the world. As you can see here, a lot of people are global or multi-regional, but we also have a lot of people who focus on sub-Saharan Africa. They're working in Europe or North America, Middle East, North Africa, etc. So we do have a pretty broad representation, which we're very excited about. We also wanted to look at the skill sets. What's the type of work that people are doing when they're working on gender equality? And if you look at these top three, we have qualitative research and analysis, program management, and advocacy. And we were sort of excited to see that we got this kind of range of skills coming through, because when we first started the organization, we really envisioned working with three groups of people, and that's academics, activists, and practitioners, and creating a space where they can come together and exchange information, where previously I think we've all been pretty siloed from one another. So we're really excited to see that. And then lastly, how can SGP support your growth as a gender professional? Again, people could select multiple answers, but we see that like far and away, knowledge exchange was the thing that kept coming up over and over again. So we're going to be talking about, our conversations and how we've been brainstorming accomplishing this, but also people, want information about job opportunities. We've been talking a lot about, consultancies and the consulting world that many of us live in, but also the idea of, people coming out of grad school or just entering the field and not having a clear path for getting into this type of work. And then gender conferences and being able to, you know, provide some capacity building and, again, professional development opportunities. So that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit more today. So SGP circles, I referred to this earlier. This is one of the primary ways that we hope to achieve and provide achieve our mission and provide a number of the benefits that I just mentioned. So what are SGP circles? Circles are founded on feminist theory and principles of communities of practice and learning communities. So they are groups of members with a common thematic or geographic or focus or expertise who interact on a regular basis to learn from each other, to coordinate local action, to pursue diverse collaboration, and to share resources. So we sort of, at this point where it's really is what we've envisioned for these circles, you know, we figure that some people want to come together in their local communities, right, who are doing gender activism on a local level and exchange resources, but those same people might have different thematic areas that they work in. So they may meet online with another group of people who focus on a given theme, right? So this could be sector-based, it could be skill-based, like you could have a gender audit circle, for example. But then we're also open to thinking about what are other ways that these circles will come together. So, you know, we don't only want to be an English-speaking organization. Might people come together who all speak Russian and work on gender equality, for example? We're really open to seeing how this evolves, but we envision this process starting as something organic that will evolve over time as we experiment and we see what works for different people in different contexts. So that being said, we are starting with some pilots. So we have sort of laid out a 6-month pilot period. We're sort of envisioning that the circles will be small to start. We'll start a few with about 12 to 14 people, and the topics will be membership driven. They'll come from, you know, what that particular circle wants to focus on. And we're working on developing some really basic resources just to provide some structure and some guidance to the circles. But again, we do want it to be an iterative process with a feedback loop so that people can try something out and then come back and we can update the resources so that when we go to start other circles, we've sort of grown and learned from those early experiences. And we envision each circle having 2 co-leaders, you know, to keep sort of this kind of horizontal sharing of power, you know, in decision-making and everything else. So we're going to be, after this, we're going to be sending out an interest survey to see if anyone is interested in being involved in this pilot process in particular. No pressure if you don't want to be involved at this point, but if you're excited to, you know, start connecting with other gender practitioners or academics or whatever it may be, this is a good way to do it. So there will be a little bit of work, you know, some legwork at the beginning to kind of get some plans together, but we'll be hosting a launch meeting in early May for those who are interested in doing this to provide more information of what this will look like. I think I could talk for a full hour just about circles, so I'll leave it at that for now. Okay, great. So what are the next steps moving forward for anyone who, you know, wants to be involved in this process moving forward? One of the biggest priorities is to fill out our leadership so that we can transition from the startup team to a system of member-elected positions. So for the time being, the startup team is sort of fulfilling the functions of the executive council. We envision, you know, having a number of elected people who will just do that administrative legwork to keep the organization running. And then we also see sort of a circle of committees, right? Committees who will focus on particular functions of the organization. Again, the committee chairs will be elected, and we'll have volunteers working on these different components of the organization. And then, as I mentioned before, the circles, which is where the majority of member activity will be happening. You know, those are the opportunities to be meeting with people who share the same interests as you or similar specializations so that you're really sharing your experiences and knowledge. And then we want to have an advisory council. So these people are sort of acting like a board. They'll provide a longer term vision for the organization, help to raise the profile of the work of SGP. And we want the people in all of these bodies that we sort of have on this little chart to represent the diversity of interests, geographic locations, genders, etc., of SGP membership. So looking a little bit more closely at those committees and the advisors and these positions that we need to fill out, we are really focused on 4 critical standing committees right now. One is membership. As we continue to grow, we want to be sure that we're reaching across sectors and geographic areas. We imagine that the membership committee will work to recruit new members and also welcome them into the organization. The nominations committee, this is critical as we work to fill out all these leadership roles. So if you know of anyone with nominations experience, including yourself, please let us know. We'd love to work with you and help to develop some processes for how this will work. Next, the professional development committee. This is one of those top priorities because we've heard from so many people that they really want more of this information. So in any case, that will be another top priority in terms of committees. And finally, diversity and inclusion committee. We'll need a group to really set up a vision and policies for the organization to ensure that we're being inclusive along many different lines and that our activities and our actions are in line with our values as an international feminist organization. And as I mentioned before, the advisory council, right? We need sort of these longer term advisors who can come on board and help us develop a future vision for the organization. So then lastly, we've just been thinking about what else can SGP provide and what can we provide, at a low cost, but have high impact for our members. One is sort of a membership database. We want members to have access to have information about who else is out there, who can they turn to when they need help or they need help with a project or different expertise. Can we do a newsletter to circulate information, what the circles are working on and things like that? Can we host gender cafes, either online or in person, where we have someone presenting their research and getting feedback and holding discussions, sector briefs, job lists, meetups, etc. Right? There's so much we could be doing. These are some of the ideas that we heard, but we're looking for more suggestions or ideas, or if one of these things really jumps out at you, let us know. You think that would be really helpful for you. Okay, and our final section for today are member-led decisions. So there are 3 main areas that we're working on to help move SGP forward. And like I said, we really are turning to the membership to help us make these decisions because they are big picture and we need that input to decide as a group how we want to move forward here now that we have some of these basic things in place. So the first one is this tension that we see between wanting and needing to be inclusive as an organization while still raising funds, and to be promoting gender expertise, which means, like other professions, being part of and contributing to professional development organization that may have a dues structure, for example, and based on a wide mapping of other similar and some dissimilar organizations, we've examined a number of different options. So we still have some questions about what constitutes membership and how to raise funds, both in the short and long term. So, can only members join circles, for example? Who can access certain information? What will attract members and also be inclusive? And we need to be very careful about these questions because as we set the criteria, we become more exclusive, right? So we just want to be very deliberate about how we're doing this. In terms of a funding structure, as I mentioned, a lot of professional associations, it's dues that are the main sort of funding structure. And we could do that by, looking at an income structure and, doing the different levels of dues based on income or something like that. But we don't want to disadvantage people who might not be able to pay the dues, right? We still want them to participate. So it's thinking very clearly about this. We can also do funding drives and have a structure that way where we're really looking at applying for grants and, running fundraising activities, which can take a lot of time, right? And we might need to dedicate a committee to that or something like that. Or we could do some combination of the two. So again, it's just thinking really deliberately about how we're doing this structure and why, and what impact that will have on the membership. Okay, so this leads me to sort of budget and funding priorities. Of course, we have fees for our legal and administrative setup. I think so far we've spent about $7,000 in getting set up as an organization. The majority of that has been self-funded. We did get a small grant from Sociologists for Women in Society to help us get our website up and running, which was fabulous. And it was a very small grant, but it had a big impact. It really allowed us to have a web presence, which is huge, right? And it's done a lot to help us get the word out. But it's thinking about what other revenue can we generate to help cover these expenses. So in addition to that legal and administrative setup, having a membership database, like we said, so that people can knowledge share, that they can get online and they can talk to this community and they can share information, that would be quite capital intensive. Or building a platform for the circles, right? For them to have a forum or different forums to post in and share information. We could also be attending conferences, potentially putting together our own conference as another way for people to come together and share information. And lastly, we've been talking a lot about access to gender journals. I think many practitioners don't have this direct access to academic information. You don't have that .edu address, email address, you're sort of out of luck. So not only thinking about how can we access current research and what's being published, but also how can we help practitioners who are doing all of this great research get their data published, and how can we do these sort of collaborations. And of course, there are many other things. These are sort of the first questions in terms of funding priorities that we came up with. But this is something else that we will be turning to the membership to ask, what do you think we should start with? What is the best starting point to put our money into, so that we're providing the most benefit for you all. And lastly, we have decisions to make about leadership and administration. So we already talked about the leadership structure. We're going to be holding elections for our committees and our advisory council, but we also have these drafted bylaws that we'll also need to vote on so that they become the official structure for the organization. So that's sort of the last piece. So to sum up, here is what we are looking forward to this year. After today, this meeting, we will send around notes, a link to a recording of the presentation and a copy of the slides, along with some additional information that some folks have been asking for. At the end of April, early May, we're including an interest survey, like I said before, for anyone who wants to hold a leadership position or nominate someone. And we hope to start voting on some of these big picture decisions in the next month. Then comes the pilot circle launch meetings, like I mentioned before, for those folks who want to be involved in that process. And then we envision the nominations sort of happening over the summer, that we'll get a structure in place and start getting nominations, so that come October, our next membership meeting, we will be able to start holding some additional votes on those people, and again, start filling out our leadership so we can really, get the organization moving. Okay, so that is what's next, right? It's vote on some of these criteria, on thinking about the funding and the priorities for funding. You can join a Circle pilot if you're interested, and again, you can fill out the interest survey if you'd like to do that. The third thing is to think about who you would nominate. If you know of someone, a leader in the field who you think will be a great advisor for this type of organization, or someone who's really active and would be great in a nominations committee, or great in a membership committee. And then put on your calendar our next member meeting in October. So we envision having 2 membership meetings like this a year. So we're going to try and aim for the spring and the fall. And that is what is coming up. So now I have just talked a whole lot, and I've given you all a ton of information. I really hope it was helpful. And now we're going to turn to some question and answer. Take a few minutes, formulate your thoughts, or even if you just have comments you want to share, any general feedback, if something jumped out at you as particularly helpful, feel free to let us know. And yeah, sorry, do type your questions in the chat box. That's going to be the easiest way, I think, for us to sort of systematically go through and respond. So
should we do hand raise for phone?
Yeah, we're asking about, I think there might be some people who joined us by phone, but let me check.
Yeah, we've got about 5 people.
Okay, there's a few people over the phone. So if you did connect over the phone and you cannot write in the chat box, I think there's a raise your hand function.
They can email.
Oh, you can also email, yes. Maybe that's the easiest way. We are monitoring the email account. I'll put it, oh no, you can't see chat box. It's info@genderprofessionals.org. So if anyone wants to submit a question to the email, info@genderprofessionals.org. We can also read off the questions that way. Yeah, exactly. So if, oftentimes you're, thinking about these things later on, a question comes up, always feel free to reach out to that email address. So it looks like we have a first question. She says, Susie says, I assume you're imagining having circles in countries other than the USA. I'm in New Zealand and would love to have a group here. That is absolutely true. And I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear before, that is definitely the intent of the circles, is that we want them to be anywhere that someone wants to get it started, so that people are sort of organizing in that local level and they're sharing like local resources and organizing together, but then also have this connection to this greater structure for resource sharing, if that makes sense. So we'd love to have a circle set up in New Zealand. That would be fabulous. Another clarification question from Lucy. At the beginning, you mentioned 2 kinds of memberships. Could you repeat about that? So I think, types of memberships. I'm trying to remember what I may have said. We did talk about the possibility of different funding structures, whether we would do dues-based or kind of fundraising. Right now, we don't have different types of memberships. So far, what we've tried to do is be really inclusive of anyone who's come forward and identified themselves as a gender specialist. We've said, welcome. We've just put out that survey to get an idea of who's out there and who would want to be a part of this, but we have not created any sort of different types of memberships or anything like that. I think in the future we might think about, can organizations join, for example, and get an organizational membership versus individuals? Those are definitely questions that we need to think about. I hope that helps, Lucy. I'm sorry if I didn't fully answer the question, but do let me know if you remember any other details that I can help to clarify. Okay, so we have a longer question from Trina. She says, who's the best person to direct to? I know one of the folks from SWS. I've served various roles in SWS. Great. I live in the US. Okay. Okay, great. So so Trina's comment is basically that she has a lot of thoughts, it seems like, which is super exciting and we love it. So yes, if you have a longer question or something that you want to brainstorm with us, just send us an email at info@genderprofessionals.org and we'll share that email again in our final slide with additional contact information. But that's the best way to sort of get in touch with us and get a conversation started. One of the members of the startup team will respond to that email and get back to you. Yeah, we have, of course, we have like a Facebook community forum, all of that. So we'll share that information on the contact slide at the end, which we'll also send around to you after this meeting. Oh, there it is. There you go. So there's our contact information if you want to take it down now. Okay, so another question for someone who's already a member of WOCAN and AWID, how do you imagine the relation of SGP with other worldwide women's groups or activists? So yes, we recognize there are networks out there already. We do not want to replace those networks. That's definitely not our goal. Our goal is to be connecting people between these different networks to provide a space that's both intersectional, it's intersectional in many different ways, but really is trying to cut across the silos of academia and practitioners and activists. So in any case, that's sort of how I think we envision the relationship going. We have people who are members of lots of different organizations and we don't plan to replace that. It really is about just doing kind of a bigger picture connection so that we're sharing resources more broadly. I don't know if Corrine or Christy have anything to add to that.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's Corrine. She wants to come on over.
Hello. Hi, everyone. The question about making sure that we're not replicating work, we just started up. So one of the next things that we're going to be focusing on is really creating those relationships with reaching out to AWID, reaching out to some of the organizations that are out there, and seeing how we can work together
and collaborate.
Do you want to talk about having done
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
sector mapping? Too?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'll have
Yeah.
Christy talk about that.
Hi, this is Christy. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining in. I just wanted to tell you too that we did quite an extensive sector mapping. A couple of our startup team spent a lot of time looking at the various organizations that were out there. We looked at about 50 of them. It's not a complete group, but we looked across professional development organizations that were academic, those that were practitioner focused, those that were regional focused, like in Africa only or in the ASEAN area only. And we tried to identify the strengths that they brought to networking and organizing and professional development, and also the spaces in between. So again, what we're designing here is something, as Christina mentioned, not to take away from what other groups are doing, but ways to better connect them and to grow their expertise and to share resources more broadly.
Great, I hope that helps with that question. The next one is about circles. What are the steps to join the SGP pilots and lead the circles in the countries other than the US? Great, so the first few pilots I think that we'll be running are in different parts of the world. And really the next step is to attend the Circle pilot meeting that will be May 8th. At least that's what we're planning right now. So if you're interested in that, like I said, the Circles, I think we could run an hour-long meeting just about that. A lot of research. We have a white paper that one of our founding members, Angela Hartley, put together on the theory sort of underlying the Circles. And we've been putting together these resources to help structure it. Yeah, here's our kind of timeline for this part. The next step is really to attend that meeting to get more information about what this is going to look like, and so that you also know exactly what you're getting involved in, like what you're signing up for. So attending that meeting and then following up from there. So I think Leah and Angela, a couple of our startup team, they've really been doing the legwork to put together the information for the circles. So they'll be providing that in that separate meeting. So that's definitely the next step. And that goes for anyone, regardless of where you are in terms of the circles and those pilots. Someone asked, can you go back to the slide about committees? Absolutely. There it is. Yeah, so these are the 4 main standing committees that we're hoping to get started in the next 6 months or so to provide, like we said, to have some people focusing on these basic functions. The startup team, we've been kind of covering all of it as best we can, just as we kind of get up and running. But having these committees in place will really do a lot, I think, to advance the organization. Do let me know if you have any specific questions about the committees. We do have some details outlined in our draft bylaws for what the committees are, what their functions are, how long people would serve on committees, things like that. But those are details that we will solidify when everyone goes to vote on the bylaws as well. So another question is, where would mentorship fall in a particular committee or professional development committee? I see. So I think we do propose having a membership committee of folks who would focus on membership. Mentorship. I misread. Mentorship would probably fall into professional development. I think that's what we envision. But again, I think we're also trying to be flexible. If we find that doesn't work, we could certainly in the following year say, it doesn't really make sense to keep mentorship here, let's move it over to this other committee, right? We're definitely open to that process of experimenting and finding what actually works for people. Yeah, so I think right now mentorship, we're thinking will be in professional development, but under that committee, but yeah.
I think also
other thoughts?
clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Christy again. I just wanted to clarify too that a lot of the ideas that we have are really just ideas at this point of what we think the organization needs based on what members have told us so far. We're hoping that this first year or two, we're really piloting a lot of these things. So the people who want to join a committee will really have an important role to play in helping establish what that committee is, how it functions, helping us create a handbook for roles and responsibilities, and again, building out a sustainable organization so that the organization itself can function as people come through and take over various aspects of being in charge.
Great, thanks, Christy. The next question from Judith is, what are you considering the advisory council doing? Would you consider retirees for the advisory council? Absolutely. Yes, the advisory council, we really do want these folks to be those who can kind of raise the profile of our organization, who can, help to kind of recruit new people and establish new partnerships, providing this long-term guidance. So we really do want those people to have a lot of experience in the field that they're bringing to the table, and we want them to have background in many different areas. Have people who represent different geographic focuses, different thematic focuses, so that when we do get the advisors together with a big question on kind of the future of the organization or setting priorities, we're getting all of those different viewpoints. So definitely, retirees would be great. We'd be building on their wealth of knowledge in order to keep the organization moving forward. Yes. Trina asked, do you have a flyer or such to share with organizations and others who work in this area? She says, yes, I live in the tundra, but we have many gender justice organizations. Yes, we do have a flyer that we can attach when we send out the meeting notes, so that if you want to send it as a PDF to anyone you can do that. It has kind of the quick rundown of the organization. You can also send people to the website, which gives a nice kind of summary of what we're up to. The Facebook page, LinkedIn, all of that. We try to, we have a YouTube channel where we've published videos that we took during a soft launch that we did. We went to the winter meeting of Sociologists Women in Society and presented sort of what we've been working on to them. And we got a wonderful reception, some amazing feedback and advice from them. And we have those videos up on YouTube. So there's lots of different places you can point people, but we're happy to include our little flyer PDF in the follow-up to this meeting. Great. Any other thoughts or questions or just general feedback? We're happy to hear it all. And again, if things come later, you can always send us an email. Okay, so Trina's comment is, I appreciate the global focus, yet where I live, the racial graduation rates are horrible in the Twin Cities. Is there a place where we might recommend orgs to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll jump in on that one. While those of us who've been part of the startup work primarily internationally and oftentimes in development sector, this is not what we envision this organization to be working on solely. So trying to connect with local NGOs and organization and activist groups wherever those locales are, so whether in the US or whether in other countries, we would like to connect those organizations to each other as well through this SGP.
Okay, great. I hope that helps. We got a question by email as well. It's from Margaret. She says, how is this society going to ensure its role is more than a project and able to gain legitimacy and positioning in the gender development space, which is what I understand to be a key objective? I think that's something that's going to be a challenge. It's something that, is kind of an underlying problem of any new organization starting out, right? I think that one thing is that we've gotten a really tremendous response from people who have been saying that this is something that they really need and that they would appreciate having. So I think as long as we're able to, keep good on our promises and, make sure that we are providing benefits to people, hopefully they will see that value and that will help us to kind of gain legitimacy within this space. I think, recruiting and nominating strong advisors will also help, right? Making good partnerships with different organizations will also help. So that's just something that we're going to have to try to do as best we can and hope that people are excited about what we're doing. And so far, people have been very excited. I think the number of signups that we've seen, since we kind of did our soft launch in January, since January till now, April 9th, actually a little bit less than, it was end of January to April 9th, right? So maybe 2.5, 3 months, that we've seen 1,000 people sign up, nearly 1,000 people, says a lot. So in any case, we're just hoping to keep it going. We really envision this startup period being about 2 to 3 years to get these structures in place so that the organization can continue without us as the startup team running it. So we're happy to put in that time and hope for the best. Yeah, so Corinne wants to take the next question. Okay. I'll turn it over to her.
Hello again. So Sarah, hi Sarah, just a shout out to Quantum Impact, which is on the West Coast, I think, but also doing incredible work in development on diversity and inclusion. So the question is, what role does SGP envision for itself in terms of creating opportunities for members to engage on the intersection of gender and race and ethnicity in global development? This is actually one of our first committees. So we have kind of our key 4 committees that we're going to be bringing people into during this startup period. And the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion is going to be a priority because it's not just about membership and bringing in, you know, members that are diverse, and that is huge, but it's also about how do we structure the organization in a way that is inclusive. So one of the examples is when we were working on our website, we were going through color samples that, for example, would be able to be seen by people with different types of color blindness. And so we picked colors that had the largest amount of contrast, and so thinking about that, thinking about color, you know, what do colors represent nationally? And so when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it is so structural, which is why we really need to move beyond ourselves, because if you've noticed, our startup team has a very particular background that doesn't represent its membership. And so we're going to need people to kind of come in and tell us what's important and what the barriers are at every point in the startup period. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is about sort of academia and this sort of support, so I might let Christy field this one. Trina says, while trained as an academic, I keep hearing academic support. How do we move beyond the privilege of academia? How do we combine academic research with actual practice and what happens on the ground? That's an excellent question, yeah.
This is a great question. So as someone who sort of sits one leg in academia and one leg in professional practice, I think this is a really important point. And I think all of us on the startup team actually are representing 2 of the 3 pillars somehow or other in our own work. And this is something we envision as part of the structure we're building. So for example, we know there are lots of gender practitioners out there who are doing incredible research, organizations which have huge data sets. They've been comparing and developing tools and comparing data from across the world. But often that research is left in reports, it's in the gray literature, it's not getting published, it's not getting the kind of feedback back into academia that those of us who are teaching the next generation are able to use that and share that. So we're looking for spaces to connect the research and what's going on out there to get it better into our classrooms, and the same to prepare our students to do applied research in real-world settings with local collaborators that represent the field. So we're looking for ways of tying these 2 together. Another kind of connection to this, which isn't explicitly related to academia, but if you want to move into the gender professional world, it's very difficult unless you have the networks. How do you get that first job? How do you get that first consultancy? How do you get that first research space? Most of these positions say, 10 years experience, a PhD, oodles of, you know, whatever. We know people don't go from nothing to that. So we see SGP as, again, a space of mentoring, shadowing, teaching, making those connections between our members working in universities around the world, as well as in organizations, development programs, activist organizations, to better connect this and kind of fill, you know, complete that knowledge loop gap.
Great. All right, another question. How do we connect to other members in our countries? This is a good question and something that we are working on. So like we said before, we envision the circles as acting as a way for people to come together in a specific geographic area. So that might be a country. However, that might also be too broad. It might also need to be more local than that. It might need to be city-based. But this is something that we've been thinking about a lot, and we're again trying to structure as we go into this pilot process with the circles, and also something that, you know, if we're able to put together the money to put together an online membership database where members could log in and search, you know, what SGP members are in this country, in this city, that would be another way to do it. So we have some ideas about how to be making these connections, but they're not going to be automatic. I think for right now, we have the SGP Community Forum on Facebook. If you just search SGP Community Forum, you'll get this group where we have people who have some have submitted the membership survey, some have not, some have come to us in other ways. Again, we tried to make it very inclusive just to get this conversation started, where you can post in there and say, hey, I'm a gender specialist from Jordan, I'm a gender specialist from California, you know, whatever it might be, and say, is anyone else nearby who might want to get together? Like, that's a great thing you can do starting right now. But like I said, in the future, we're hoping to build structures so that this becomes a bit more intuitive, so that it is a little more formalized, but also accessible for people to be getting this information. Yeah, great.
And if people have ideas on how to do it better
Yes.
and faster, we're totally open to that.
Even better. If you are like, hey, you should do it this way, send us an email. We'd love to hear it. Yeah, like we said, we want this to be driven by the membership. And so far we took, what we've heard so far, we've been trying to build the structures to implement it, but it's going to be a process. So. Okay, we have a couple more. Let's see. If we have skills or ideas, might you consider some part on your website to give ideas? Yes, that's a great question. That's something else we've tried to come up with. The problem with the website is that it is quite capital intensive for us to get functionality that allows people to put in input. So again, that comes down to our funding priorities, but we do want to have ways for people to give feedback in specific ways. So one thing in our follow-up to this meeting, for example, and in the next 6 months, we're going to be sending out information like, here are our bylaws as far they've been drafted, and have a comment period for the bylaws, right? So as we make these big member decisions, we're going to have periods of time people can provide specific feedback, and we'll provide a way to do that. In the meantime, definitely send emails, post in the SGP community forum, LinkedIn, whatever your preferred method of communication is, feel free to contact us and let us know. But yes, eventually we will have a formal way to do that.
And if you have ideas now, please go ahead and send them to us via email at info@genderprofessionals.org. We're pretty responsive. Yeah, so please go ahead and do that.
Please do share.
Web design support.
Oh, right. Yeah. That being said, if you know of people who, we worked with the Magma Lab as a feminist web designer in Chicago. She put together our website just to get us this web presence. She helped us with our branding. She was fabulous to work with. But if you know of other people, feminist web designers, feminist lawyers, like anyone, all of these sort of technical skills, we're definitely looking for advice on getting people to help with these different functions, but also maintaining that feminist perspective and thinking critically about how we're doing it. So definitely open to suggestions. Laura says, maybe this has been asked already, but will national organizations of gender professionals be able to become members or just individual people? This is a great question. So this is something that we are still considering of, as we move forward with our membership structure and dues structure and all of that, we do, I think, want to have a way for organizations to become members, but we're definitely still talking about that. So again, if you have a strong feeling or you've seen a model in another organization that you think works really well, or that doesn't work well at all, definitely let us know. We want to learn from people's experiences and what they've been involved in thus far. Okay.
All great suggestions coming in. So.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, so Anthony says, back to this idea of connecting with people in the same country. What if you start by making a list of members in each country and share with people in that same country? We could do something like that. The only thing we concern is that we don't want to violate anyone's privacy, or there's safety concerns, things like that. So we definitely don't want to make anyone's information public without their consent. So that's why for now we recommend posting in the community forum and saying, hey, send me a message if you're in this place for now. I think in the future, if we do a membership database, right, or a list of people in different places, we would need to make it password protected. We would need to make sure that we're not violating any privacy or safety concerns. So that's the one reason that we're not doing that now. But again, we are working on a structure for that in the future. Any other? These have all been really good questions. I'm really excited to see all of this feedback. Okay, so there's a question about what would be the benefit of being a partner of this organization for other organizations and or individuals. I think that kind of depends on and where you're coming from. And I mean, I think for members, we've talked a lot about what the benefits that we're hoping to provide. For organizations, this is why we're still figuring out, okay, what would an organizational membership look like and what would be the benefit for those types of partnerships. So we haven't landed on anything yet. I don't know if Karine, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah. Or yeah.
I can say that.
Yeah.
I can say that we've been studying other organizations. Right. We've been mapping how other professional development organizations work, both academic and otherwise, and networks. And there is a huge variety of options available to us, from free membership, but you do merely donations with suggested donations, from things like a minimum $20 up to lifelong organizations, organizations that could apply as an organization and get 3 members then listed with a subsidized membership for other members of the organization. There's oodles of ways of thinking about this. So we are just trying to map the field and understand what values each one of those decisions would represent. Again, we'll be pushing this back to membership to vote on, to have further discussions about. You'll all get emails about that. But there is this tension between wanting to be as inclusive as we can and yet recognizing that we do need some money to function as an organization and provide the kinds of platforms that members seem to be interested in. So I think we'll probably need to host another meeting just to talk about that, but certainly pay attention to emails coming at you and engage in the conversation. Maybe we even open up to a Facebook conversation and ask for people to solicit more information for us from spaces where you're networked.
Yeah. Great. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions or anything on your minds at the moment? We really appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness. We threw a lot of information at you. We're very excited to be sharing this because we've all been doing this legwork over the last year. So it's just so great to see so many people involved and joining these conversations. We've had a really great day of talking to people, and we're just going to keep it going. So I don't know if anything else to add. Oh, Trina says thank you. So I'll reiterate that she says thank you. Thank you, Trina, as well.
And Susie also thanks.
Yeah, we really hope that it's helpful again, and we'll continue to keep you informed. If you know of anyone else who you think might be interested in joining again, or taking part in a committee, any of those positions, people who are really eager to get involved, we'll be sending around information about that.
And we should note that there is a donation button. So if you happen to know people,
right,
or you're looking for grants or resources and can share that information with us as well, people looking for those last minute tax donations.
Right, exactly. I mean, the SWS grant that we got was $500. It's relatively small, but it went a long way in getting us up online and having a web presence. Someone else just gave a comment about, PayPal is not widely used in Europe. I think we do have on the donation button on the website, if anyone's asking about that, it's the Stripe is the thing that's used. So it's just regular credit card, debit card information you put in. You don't need PayPal for that. But that is good to note in the future, again, if we do start collecting dues or something like that, to have a variety of ways to do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, if there's no other questions, again, thank you all so much for attending. We'll look through the questions again. If there was anything that we missed, we'll get back to it. And again, we'll include these questions and our answers in the notes that we send around from this meeting and also from the other meetings. So you can see what questions people asked in our earlier meetings and our responses to those as well. So yeah, we hope that's helpful, and thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
You can write a little farewell message.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
To close out.